Hello and welcome back to another video from Oxford Paranormal UK. Today is the 15th of December 2014 and I have another interesting subject, believe it or not. Today, this subject, actually in this particular video, I don't think this is going to be particularly long, but I'm actually quite curious as to how many on a you know, let's say an average session of maybe 5 to 10 minutes. I'm not talking about these full-blown investigations, although I will actually mention about the full-blown investigations, as in, you know, somebody starts doing an investigation on a particular site sort of, you know, 9 o'clock at night and they finish at 5 o'clock in the morning maybe. But what I'm curious about is how many EVPs do people typically get per session that they do? Let's just say a typical session for me is between 5 and 10 minutes. I have done longer sessions. I've never really done shorter sessions. As you can probably tell from my videos, I can't do any I can't tend to do anything very short. But yeah, I've done long sessions. I've done 20 minutes, 30-minute sessions before. Editing those is a complete and utter nightmare because it takes so long, and going through, you know, the edits, rewinding, reversing it, maybe amplifying, trying to cut out noise, you know, sort of playing around with it, trying to enhance those EVPs. I don't know whether, well, it's not the equipment that I use because I'm using bog standard equipment here. You know, I'm using the GB1 app. I haven't actually used that for quite a while. I use the EchoVox. I use my SB7. Typically, most of my work is just done on purely digital recorders. I'm not using anything special, you know. I'm just using, this is an Olympus DS40. I've used Olympus DS2s. I use a Zoom H1 and I use Zoom H4n. And previously I've used a combination of Sony recorders, Panasonic recorders. I've used a brand that I can't remember now that was typically Grundig recorders. Used by solicitors and such like years and years ago. I've used a whole range of different, you know, I've used reel-to-reel Panasonic and some unknown brands which I can't remember now. But yeah, typically for a session anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes, I get 50 plus EVPs coming through. These are not, you know, these are not pre-recorded. You know, these are not, they're not the same EVPs either. You know, when I first started using, for instance, I started using the GB1 app. When I first started using that, I wasn't really familiar with all the sort of pre-recorded bites, sound bites that were going on in that piece of software. And I thought what I thought were responses that were coming through and noises and such like that were actually happening. I thought they were actually EVPs, and of course they weren't. And if you like, the same thing can probably apply to the SB7. You do, even though I tend to actually leave this on a 200 millisecond sweep rate. Even at 200 milliseconds, you can quite clearly, you know, hear radio station bits of information that you just know that they're not EVPs. But yeah, how do you edit this stuff? I mean, I can't believe that I'm unique in getting so many EVPs coming through. I mean, you know, it takes time. I now really limit my sessions to sort of between 5 and 10 minutes for this particular reason. I would love to do it for a lot longer, but the editing time afterward is the thing that, you know, really kind of gets me. you know, annotating video and doing all of those things. I mean, a lot of my sessions are not public. That I don't publish them on YouTube. The editing software that I actually use, called Acoustica, is very good at labeling within the audio file the EVPs. Very, very clever. At the moment, there isn't a way of publishing that information really easily. So producing a video for me actually takes quite a long time, and I believe it takes a long time for other people as well. So I'm not unique in this. But what I'm actually inquisitive about is the amount of EVPs that come through, the actual frequency of them. That's the bit that I'm kind of curious about. I have seen people on YouTube publishing, you know, videos and sessions and such like, and they will say that they've done a session for 20 minutes and all that they get through are maybe 5 to 10 EVPs, and the video is then cut down, you know, to size to just incorporate those EVPs. How many EVPs do you get? I'd be inquisitive to know. I'd like to know, because I get bombarded with them. Always have done. I don't know whether it's just because spirits like being here or what. I don't really know. I mean, I know people like Mike Paranormal, Scary Larry, Steve Huff, Throp Paranormal. You know, a lot of these people, it's almost like you can just turn on any device and you start getting EVPs coming through. Some people, it seems to take a long time, which I find interesting. And I have another interesting comment to make, actually. I mean, a lot of people watch the TV programs, the Ghost Adventures, and there's some other TV programs from around the world, here in the UK as well. They go a whole hour for a TV program, and I know that a lot of it is, you know, advertising and PR, and there's lots of, you know, dramatic music and dramatic action and all this kind of stuff. But, you know, I've always really surprised at how few EVPs they seem to actually get. And also the quality of them, the lack of quality of the EVPs that these TV programs seem to produce. It's always fascinated me because, excuse me, if you're doing a lock-in for 6 hours or 7 hours in a building that is known to be haunted or possessed, surely you would get hours of EVPs. And I do wonder sometimes whether they're actually getting that many EVPs, or maybe they are getting a lot of EVPs and they're only picking out the bits that are, you know, look good on TV. You know, I hate to say it, but that's what they're doing it for. They're getting paid to produce work, a bit like a lot of these spirit mediums and such like, you know, that have to perform on stage for TV. I do sometimes wonder whether, you know, the stage bit and the acting bit interferes with their work, if you like, as a paranormal, and producing the goods for TV, good enough for TV to, you know, increase ratings, etc. I may be oversimplifying it a little bit, and I probably am, and I'm not being disrespectful to the TV programs, because I like watching them. They are interesting. I'm actually more interested in the history behind a lot of their investigations rather than the EVPs that they get, you know. But yeah, I'd like to know, do you get more EVPs in your home or in a certain building or a certain situation or a place? I can speak for myself. It kind of doesn't really matter where I go. As I say, I've been in hospitals, graveyards, churches, my own home. I've been in all sorts of places, you know, back streets of Oxford, It doesn't really matter. I get huge amounts of EVPs coming through. You know, have I just, you know, do I have a following of spirits or something, or do they just know? I know Steve Huff has actually mentioned this before. He said of himself one time that he felt he was a spirit magnet, and I can kind of relate to that. I can really relate to that, because I think that is quite a good truth about a paranormaler. You know, I think if you have a passion and a belief in something enough, I believe, like, we go back to the relating it to human beings, you know, I believe that there are you know, your psyche, your psychic physiology and your psychology can project onto other people, and that, you know, initiates the response that you get. And if you're an aggressive person, or your persona is something that other people find aggressive, they're not going to respond to you very, very well. And maybe that applies to the spirit world. I believe it applies to the spirit world as well. If you're an open mind, kind person, respectful, you know, it attracts those people. It attracts the right spirits, if you like. So I believe that the persona that you project when you go into a room full of people, you know, people will react in you in your outward persona, if you like, your psyche. And I think the same happens in the spirit world. If you walk into a building where there happens to be spirits, or that maybe spirits frequent or happen to be passing through, and you are an aggressive, angry, negative person, you're not going to attract them. Very much like a magnet. I believe that if you go into a place with the right attitude and frame of mind, and your psychology is pleasing to other people in that way, then spirits get attracted to you like a magnet. And that's my theory. That's what I believe happens. And it doesn't seem to really matter where I go. I've walked through woods. You know, I've walked through woods before. You know, you go for a walk through a field and you just know that they're there. They're there all the time. Or they're coming out on video, or they're coming out with their EVPs on a recorder. It doesn't seem to really matter where I go. Maybe I'm like Steve Huff, you know, I like that term, actually, a spirit magnet. I think that's actually quite applicable. I think it's actually a very good way of describing how, you know, how some paranormalers are. And if you're a very negative, aggressive, you know, shouting, you're angry all the time, hey, guess what you're going to attract? You're going to attract the same kind of spirits. You know, the nice, quiet, you know, calm spirits that you know, that maybe roam around. They're not going to go anywhere near you. The only people that you're going to attract, or the only spirits that you're going to attract, are the ones that are the same, kind of the same as you, or the ones that respond to the same way you are. So, you know, maybe that's could be one of the reasons why people get a lot of negative EVPs. I believe that's the case. That, you know, your frame of mind and your psyche has an effect on the responses you get. And yeah. So anyway, I've waffled enough. Again, I welcome your comments below. Get into a discussion, please. You know, I'd like to hear, how many EVPs do you get on a typical session? And when do you get more? When do you get more? When do you get less? You know, is there a time that you get less? Or do you only get 10 per session? You know, I'd like to hear. I'd be interested to hear. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again soon in another video.